I think that my work has gone in a direction where the things that evolved out of radical Jewish culture have become subsumed into my basic musical language. That what was very important for me, and I know everybody has a different take, but my take was that it was crazy in the 80s especially that so many of us were doing music that was kind of based on collage and was drawing on influences of music from all over the world, including Africa, Asia, and so on. But Jewish music didn't really have a function in our language, even though there were so many of us who were Jewish. And it always felt strange to me because I really enjoyed like Jewish comedy and stuff, and also comedy that didn't come directly out of dialect, because I also enjoyed that, like the Barton Brothers, who played with the fact that, like, in the 40s, the Yiddish radio would be sort of like this mix between Yiddish and English, and they played with how funny that was. But then even later comedians, like Lenny Bruce and so on, he made his Jewishness an important part of his work without kind of underlining it so much. But you can't imagine Lenny Bruce's work, or you can't imagine Allen Ginsberg's work without Jewish culture. It's a strong subtext, and that's what I was missing.
What I was really interested in, what was really obsessing me at that particular time, was kind of a rediscovery of who I was. I'd spent a lot of time in Japan, and it really caused me to think a lot about my own identity, about the language I spoke. And I came back to New York after some bitter experiences of alienation in Tokyo, and I was looking for something to really embrace me, something that I could belong to. And we began to talk. Ribot, Anthony, London, a lot of people began talking about the idea of where Jewish culture had gone, where it came from. It meant a lot to me to think about my identity in those ways. And at that time, community has a different feel now, I think, than it used to have. People talk about, the Paris of the 20s and 30s with people in coffee shops sitting around talking about philosophy and art and this and that. It's a little different now. It's not the same. But in 91 and 92, a bunch of us would get together at Ratner's or at the 2nd Avenue Deli and talk about what it meant, what it was, what it could be.
We were able to transpose this feeling of culture as a continuum that moves between ancient and future as something that we could draw upon. And I think that a lot of us didn't quite know what our cultural place was because we felt maybe very disenfranchised. but we tried to make art out of being disenfranchised. I mean, that's something that's always interested me. Like, I forget what Mahler said, but Mahler had this comment like as where it was a long list of things, and at the end it was, and as a Jew I feel at home nowhere in the world. And I always liked that. I felt close to that.
For me, it was just the beginning of something. It was really, it felt really good. It made a lot of sense. And the idea of taking Jewish music into the 21st century, trying to give it some kind of sense of direction, trying to explore what its possibilities were, the same way that jazz musicians had taken Dixieland and moved it towards swing, and then moved it towards bop, and then moved it towards the avant-garde in the 60s. Could go from Jelly Roll Morton to Albert Ayler and Cecil Taylor in a mere 40 years. It made me think, well, couldn't that be possible with Jewish music? And it was as simple as that. It was as simple as continuing the project and the idea of instilling curiosity and adventure into this music and into musicians who would explore it.
What is Jewish music? It's a whole question that Zorn forces you to ask. It's so funny sometimes to see radical. You'd be in Germany and this poster, if you're at a concert, says radical Jewish music. I'm like, who the hell's gonna come see this in Germany, man? This is called something else. But yeah, I mean, I was telling someone was asking me about like the whole religious aspect of it at the end. I said, listen, music is my religion, and this has just made my religion bigger because it's just now taken my whole musical vocabulary and opened it up. Of course, I can only speak for myself, so this is what's been for me is an opportunity to open up my musical vision to more things and have more opportunity to play music, and that's what I do. So here we are playing more music and just and kind of adding to the history.
The Jewish music I got into a lot through Zorn because he was playing music that was Jewish in a way that I could relate to because of my background being really into punk rock and Ornette Coleman and that type of music, and it had this depth to it that I honestly hadn't heard really in Jewish music. Then that spurred me on to check out other things, and then I heard Neftuli Brandwein and Dave Taras, and that really blew me away. Just the depth that I started to hear, and when I started to try to learn some of it on guitar, I was like, whoa, this stuff is amazing. And then when I moved to New York about 5 years ago, I knew that I wanted to form a band that was playing all this stuff, and that's where Rashanim started. Jewish thing, I think, it allows musicians to hook into something that is not a passing, it's not a trend. I mean, it's always been here. You can't call something that's existed for 3,000 years a trend. I mean, that's a long trend. And whether you're tapping into it from a, personally from a completely musical perspective and are not interested in any spirituality, that's fine. It's still, the Jewish thing of what Jews have inherited over millennia is there in language, culture, food. I mean, it's all there. My personal take on it has been for myself that I kind of have developed whatever my take on Jewish music is as I've become more traditional in other ways Jewishly. So they're, to me, are very tied, but I certainly don't think it has to be. Everybody has their own way of relating to music and to Judaism.
We really put out adventurous music, experimental music, something that asks questions. And I thought that the word radical kind of spoke for that in some kind of a way, and I think it was Radical New Jewish Culture was the first way it was presented in Munich, because I couldn't decide whether to just call it radical Jewish culture or new Jewish culture. So I called it radical new Jewish culture, and eventually the new is what disappeared, which was interesting. I think people liked saying, the rad Jew thing was like a whole, it was a whole movement. And eventually kind of blossomed into something bigger than we expected.
I see it as part of a broader renaissance in Judaism, in interest in Judaism, in Jewish culture, from everything from Yiddish theater to to religious Judaism to the radical Jewish culture thing. I think there is. I think Jews in America have gotten to a certain point where we're ready to deal on a real level with our tradition. That's not to say that a lot of people haven't been dealing with it. But from my perspective, I grew up. I wasn't embarrassed to be a Jew, but it certainly wasn't something that I would have said I was proud of, other than knowing and loving my grandmother, and she's Jewish, so I'm proud to be a Jew. It didn't extend beyond that. And I think a lot of people now, maybe it's a New York thing, but it's not. I think it's across the spectrum that Jews are just interested in exploring their identity in a real way. We're not limited to a Woody Allen movie and Chinese food on Christmas, because that's all that's open. Which is what I grew up with.
It's fun to see a younger generation get inspired by what we've done and want to be involved and want to take it somewhere. And that's one of the most exciting things about what's happened. Is it's not something that existed in a small bubble from 92 to 95 and then disappeared. It's something that has been passed on from generation to generation.
So looking forward, I think the radical Jewish culture thing, even though it's been fairly recently, last few years, that I've kind of become a part of it. I think that when a movement, if it is a movement, I don't know if it is, but when a group of people who are doing something, kind of are able to pass it on to other people, and it's able to expand and change and become something quite different from what it was originally, I think that strengthens it, and I think that it kind of proves, in a way, not that the viability needs to be proven, but in a way it kind of like shows that like it holds its water, and I think that's kind of where it's going. It's just each person kind of takes it and goes off into the little area, and pretty soon through each person doing that, I mean, it's not one link. It's like each link in the chain has like a bunch of links that come off of it, and soon you have this web, and it's all these different people. And if you looked at it from the perspective of 1992, which obviously wasn't that long ago, it might not have made sense, but now it does.
Remember this one, Ben?
Yeah,
Sure. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. was never interested in retreading on traditional Jewish music. That music really felt very dated to me. It was very specific to my grandparents' generation, and they had such a strong connection to it and exposed me to a lot of it when I was a child, so I had this, I had those sounds in my head, but I was much more interested in a more modern expression of Jewish music, and a more modern expression of, my own connection to Jewish music. So for me, now, the Jewish music that I make tries to reflect my feelings about being a Jew, my experience of being a Jew in New York, and of playing a sort of modern music. The music that I've tried to contribute to the Radical Jewish Culture series specifically has dealt more with the modern Jewish experience. I was always really interested in creating a completely new notion of what Jewish music was, one that was relevant to my experience as being a Jew. And so I think when Zorn started calling this scene of people and musicians the Radical Jewish Culture series or Radical Jewish Culture, it was more an idea that it was not traditional Jewish culture. It was something truly radical, something truly different that was often critical of Jewish ideas, questioned Jewish ideas. Obviously was also very supportive of the notion of being Jewish in the modern world, but was really dealing with the nitty-gritty of what it meant to be Jewish in the modern world, and specifically in New York City. And so that was, those were some of the ideas that I think people were thinking about, and sort of what brought us together as a community was to create something new and different. But part of making something new and different is that everybody has different ideas about what it's going to sound like and how it will be manifested both visually and sonically.
What we do with the Radical Jewish Culture series is specifically commission an artist to create something that contributes to an idea of what Jewish music could be. And it's a specific project, and I like giving that challenge to a bunch of different people and see what they come up with.
It's the work that stands, in perpetuity. And so I think maybe one of the things that Zorn was trying to do in codifying the idea of radical Jewish culture was to, preserve some of the work from this period that wasn't being documented by anybody else. And yet there was this huge body of work being generated, all these Jewish musicians making new Jewish music that truly was radical and not traditional. So, to me, radical Jewish culture, a movement, maybe not. And a great idea, yes, and an incredible body of work that will serve as the document of great Jewish music in our lifetime. I really feel that when people look back in 100 or 200 years of what was going on in Jewish music in, the year 2000 or the year 2006, they'll look to this body of work and say, here's this huge new, like, blossoming almost of a new sound for Jewish music.